speakers are speaking to you, that'd be fantastic. Brilliant. So welcome to the session, everyone. First of all, we're going to hear from Ben Murray, who's going to do a brief introduction to Maritime UK and say thank you to you all for attending.
Great, thanks, Jess. Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see, first off, so many people here actually for this. It's absolutely fantastic. So for those who don't know me, I'm Ben Murray. I'm the Chief Executive at Maritime UK. Maritime UK being the umbrella body for the maritime industries in the UK, bringing together the shipping, ports, engineering, leisure, science and professional services industries. And our job is twofold, really. The first task that we have been set by industry and government is to cohere industry's objectives and priorities for government, so government can say across the breadth of maritime, what is it that you would like us to do, but crucially, what is it that you're prepared to do as a sector too, because we have huge talent, capacity and ability within industry ourselves to drive progress and to make change. And our heading for that, our joint heading that we have, is Maritime 2050. If anybody doesn't know about Maritime 2050, it sets out the steps in a high-level way, but with more detail in more of the roadmaps about how we will become the world's most competitive maritime centre by 2050. So it sets out those steps, and one of the key pillars in there is around people. And hopefully colleagues on the call will be aware that there's been, I think, quite a good uplift in activity in this space, which is broadly around skills, making sure we've got the skills we need, the talent we need to drive that ambition. And a lot of that's being led through the Maritime Skills Commission. It's on careers and outreach, which is the work that Jess is leading, and all of you wonderful people are either involved or hopefully going to be involved with very soon. And then it's also around D&I in particular. There's further work on things like welfare and for seafarers in particular, and protections for seafarers. But on D&I, it's clearly about increasing the levels of diversity to ensure we're reflecting the communities in which we live and exist, but also reaching the broadest range of talents to support that 2050 mission. So I'd just like to say huge thanks to everybody for being here. It really is valued and recognised, because people do this on top of what you do day to day, and that is it really is to be commended. And I think it shows the passion that people on this call have for the sector. And this is an example of an initiative that we have the ability to drive forward ourselves. We'll have all sat in meetings where people talk about people in schools, young people not knowing about the maritime sector. What's fantastic about this initiative is we've heard that challenge, all of us, and we're doing something about it. Rather than just moaning that people don't know about us, we're giving up our time, we're going into schools and colleges or doing things remotely and actually delivering the message that we know that maritime is a wonderful sector. It has huge potential, huge opportunity, and can be incredibly rewarding for people. So this is a real case of people getting up and committing themselves and supporting an endeavour, and it's working. I don't know the exact figures, but the last time I checked, I think it was 72,000 young people have now been spoken to, and we hope inspired about the world of maritime because of the people on this call and elsewhere. So to those on this call that have been volunteering, huge thanks. It is incredible what you're doing on behalf of the sector, and actually on behalf of the people we're going in to speak to as well, because we're making them aware of an opportunity they might not have been aware of, and of a sector that is particularly in the UK at least is a little bit more front and centre in the national consciousness. And for those who are new to this, welcome. I think you've got a wonderful peer support group here of other people who are volunteering, people who will give up their time to have a conversation with you about how best to engage in the work. But huge thanks on behalf of Maritime UK, and I think all of the people involved in trying to deliver 2050 to say thanks for giving up your time today. I hope you find it useful and valuable. And if anybody ever wants to have a conversation about any other aspect of the work that we're doing on 2050, just drop us a line, because we can all deliver so much more if we work together, and this is a really good example of that. So thanks again, enjoy the session, and I hope to see many of you up and down the country engaging young people very soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ben. That was great. So before we hear from the Inspiring the Future team about the programme, we're going to hear from one of our current ambassadors, Gordon, who's going to share some of his experiences of the programme.
Many thanks, Jess, and many thanks, Ben, for that intro and encapsulating really what this programme tries to achieve. And as you rightly say, it is all by volunteers. However, one may be connected to the maritime, some work in ports, some in offices, and some seagoing like me. I see there's like 30 plus people on this call, so it's like a wow. It shows that there's still a passion, and rightly so, within the maritime. And I've got to say hello to Andy Dinsdale, who I know, and he's got the best nautical background there because it has a submarine on it, and I'm an ex-submariner, so loving every minute. I've got 5 minutes to talk to you.
Just targets.
Yeah. I've got 5 minutes to talk to you, and in fact I could easily talk for 50 minutes without taking a breath on the maritime, but I'm going to try and squeeze it all down to how I came about being an ambassador for Maritime UK and STEM subjects, and an ambassador for women in maritime. And I group all those things together because that's what I'm about. I used to enter schools pre-pandemic, in fact way before pre-pandemic, linked with my children at the time, and give careers talks. So it was a sort of follow on from that. Most latterly, before the pandemic, I used to enter my grandchildren's preschool, and would you believe it, talk about the maritime and what role I play in the maritime, and the kids even at that age, it's unbelievable what they know about GPS and positioning at subsea, what animals live in the sea, and that is absolutely fantastic. But as the pandemic came in, it was really nice to know that I fell in with Maritime UK because they were linking up with employers and Inspiring the Future, and it gave you the opportunity to virtually enter schools. So what I'd say is, and I'm also a mentor for somebody here in Plymouth at YMCA Discovery College as well, where that includes face-to-face. So that has a disclosure and barring check with it. So what I'd say to anyone really is consider the same things. Obviously, that's if you're entering schools or seeing someone face-to-face, there is a lot more of the protocol that you have to go through for safeguarding and working with minors. So without that paperwork, if you like, and a police barring check and that, on the Inspiring Future and what's provided through Maritime UK is a whole host of videos of the etiquette, shall we say, the protocols, how to behave, what language to use, etc. So if you're totally new to it and you haven't been a keynote speaker or a guest speaker at conferences and seminars and things like that, irrespective of the age group, then I would recommend that you watch those videos and just get in the mind frame that these are children and young adults that we're talking to. We are virtually entering their classroom. So also some of the minor communication is firstly with the teacher or the organizer that's running with the event. You are then talking with children. So if your vocabulary is very wide and expansive or contains expletives, then best train yourself if that's the case. And it comes down to like, oh, a crappy day, or it's raining, so it's shitty outside, or the weather's bad. I create my own mindset before I engage with the schools to lose even those minor words. So I use, I've had a challenging day, or it's not very nice weather. So I'm always, if you like, and I'm sure we all need to train ourselves like that, to be on our best behaviour with the etiquette and the language that we use. I obviously work in maritime and overseas and in multicultural teams, ocean going with sometimes 25, 27, I think is the maximum, different nationalities on my ship. So I'm already self-trained to reduce my vocabulary range, and that's very helpful when you're talking with primary school. Secondary school, they're very much alive and switched on and with it. So it's pretty much free reign. And I think on one occasion I had a sixth form Catholic girls' school that I did a presentation for as well. So I was a bit gritting my teeth there and thinking, I don't know what sort of kind of questions are they going to ask me here. But overall, I would say just be yourself. When you're entering something like this and you're going to virtually enter the school, if you're normally reserved, I would say carry on being normally reserved. Don't try and clown it, be streetwise, or be somebody that you're not. the passion that you have for the maritime will come through anyway, and the organisation of the session that you do will be based around some sort of fun game. What's my line? They have to guess what your job is. You have to give only yes or no responses type thing. So it's not like you've got to put on in a theatre a show for them. So don't think it's a tough call, but be ready for the tough questions sometimes. So if I can just give examples like that, it's you know, some of them might say, where do you go to the toilet? You know, and for children asking that, you know, it's like it's a daily thing for them where they have to ask the teacher, can I go to the toilet? So if you're on a ship or if you're on an offshore wind farm and you're on a turbine, you know, it's a legitimate question, where do you go for a toilet? And that's actually come up as well, because until recently there weren't toilets on turbines, so you had to hold on to it or do it in a bag. But this is very sort of a roughy tufty offshore man type thing. But again, because of a lot of pressure with DEI and the amount of women technicians that work in the field, a lot of employers have been forced to, and for want of a better word, because they were reluctant to start with, actually put toilets so that you can have bodily functions when you're on a remote work site like a wind turbine in the water. Other questions is, how much do you earn? And I guarantee you that will come up. Now, what's your salary like? How much do you earn? So I always make a joke of it without saying a fixed sum. So if I, you know, sometimes I say, well, I earn twice as much as the headmaster, so it's a good idea to go and work in the maritime. And of course, that's not without saying a value or what I earn, or necessarily me understanding what a headmaster would earn. But the children love it because it's a bit of a gag, and they think, oh yeah, the maritime must be good, then I'm going to earn more than the headmaster does right now. So think about having some a bit of banter, if you like, but having some witty responses to some of those questions. Also, when one of the most popular ones is, what's my line, where it's a yes no, and you know, do you work with animals, are you involved in climate change? So a lot of the children are very much into, although they don't probably know net zero or decarbonisation or you know, trying to remove hydrocarbons out the fuels that we use in the maritime, they're very much climate aware, so be prepared for questions on that. A lot of them have pets and that, so they'll ask, do you work with pets or animals, and thinking that you might work in a zoo. But whenever your responses during that is always like a yes, no, or a maybe, or do you wear a uniform? See, so I say, well, sometimes I do. And of course, if we only think of uniform as the blue light or military, we're being stereotypical. So, you know, there are uniforms which are not female orientated, which is coveralls, high-vis jackets, and hard hats. So I will say sometimes, or whatever. And then at the end, when it comes out to explanations, you can then, if you're good at it, recap on those questions yourself, which were answered, and then give a more broader outlook and say, yeah, I commute to work, but not normally like people would on a train or in their car. I commute by helicopter to an offshore platform or something like that. And they go, oh, wow, this is exciting as well. So although I try not to make it sound like James Bond, my role or my job offshore, because most definitely it's not. And that's one of the things that I think is important you should bring to it as well, is the pros and the cons. So when they think, oh, Gordon has a great salary, oh, he goes to all these fantastic places, but of course they haven't been on vacation to the places I go to, and invariably I would not choose to go to some of the places I've been to on a vacation. But working in 35 degrees for 12-hour days, you know, it is hard work. The sacrifice of leaving your families behind for long durations. It's not like, no disrespect to office workers or whatever, you know, because you go on a seminar for 2 days or something, or you're 3 days away from hubby or wifey. It is a long time. So I tell the children that although my job has some really great things about it, then you have to think about, you know, the balance and keeping a work-life balance. But because I know my 5 minutes has probably run out already, I'd say that there is 1,001 jobs in the maritime, and I think Lorna Wagner, that was at the time, created a 101, you know, 101 jobs in the maritime. I said, no, there's 1,001. What do you mean, Gordon? What do you mean? You know, I've asked loads of people and I've got to about 101. And I say, no, apart from a chimney sweep, maybe, every other job that's on land, there is an equivalent job, whether it be seagoing or not, in the maritime. So especially when I'm trying to encourage women or young ladies to join, I say, you know, it's not just that you're going to be a croupier or a dancer on Carnival cruises or something like that. And I give real examples from the real world. And I say, although I'm in the senior leadership position, the contractors that were working for us on my ship, the two next significant employees on that vessel were both women, one Brazilian, one Dutch. They were marine superintendents. And they arrived by helicopter, and they were going, wow, wow. And of course, then all the women that are in the classroom, the young ladies, they then start to ask about, how can they do it? And another important thing that I do then, trying to promote all these aspects, is to say that in modern times now, it's an assumption everyone's going to go to university. So I explain, although I'm a different generation, that when I left school in a city comprehensive, which was like a conveyor belt of people, out of 300 leaving, 5 or 6 went to university, maybe 20 went to college, the rest went out in the real world. So when it comes to learning, or when you believe your education ends, because it doesn't, and I talk about lifelong learning and CPD and things, is that we all learn in different ways and at different times when we mature. So I explain to them about apprenticeship routes, about just getting a job with a local, maybe somebody in the logistics chain at the port, which will then get you into the port, which then might mean something to do with fabrication with offshore, which then might lead to an offshore job. So there's a whole multitude of jobs. So as well as there being 1,001 jobs, when you think of the maritime as a whole, there's also a great many routes. And of course, we're talking to young adults that are in education. So I promote STEM, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, the physics, maths and English and that. But I like to lean also now towards IT, the electronics that are taught at school and that. So it's not just sawing up bits of wood in allied trades. There's a lot many things that are in school or that are applicable to the big wide world out here. And the other thing that I do make a point of trying to encourage the youngsters is that the big world out here doesn't talk in tech speak. We don't like someone just because we've hit a button and you get a thumbs up or a heart. So trying to make them understand that the world outside communicates different to what they're doing through their social media, I think is important as well. And that comes to when it's letter writing, CV writing, which their teachers will obviously teach them to do, but getting them in the habit about how you communicate with adults in an adult world. So I think that's important. And then they're fair a lot better and a lot more chances, whether it's applying for college or applying for jobs in the maritime.
Thank you very much for that.
So I think it's totally fun, and if you've got the passion, just be yourself out there and enjoy it, every minute of it, because the children, whatever age they are usually absolutely wonderful, and there'll be a laugh along the way. So laugh with them and just be yourself.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Gordon, for that background. I think there's some really key points in there, and it was really fantastic to hear about your experiences. So we're going to hear from the team from Education and Employers who run the Inspiring the Future programme. So Katie Hampshire and Mitas Costello. We'll talk to you now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. We do have some slides to kind of back it against, but Gordon, thank you for that, because it gave everybody, I think, a really good insight into the way in which, particularly from your own sector, you can have a think about that, and you've spanned both primary and secondary with that as well. So yeah, I loved hearing that. We love having you on the sessions as well, so it's great. I'm just going to quickly give you a bit of an overview about our charity, where we're coming from, and so that you can see kind of why Maritime UK are partnering with us. And then Mitas will talk a bit more practically about, if you're not already signed up, how you can sign up, and if you are signed up, like what activities might look like, and the support that's available for you as well on this. So hopefully that'll give you a good overview, and then we've got a few more ambassadors to talk to in Q&A. So just briefly, Education Employers are a charity. We've been going since 2009, and we were set up to really help connect state schools, and it is all state schools, with volunteers in the world of work. We do that in a couple of different ways. So we do research into the impact that this kind of volunteering makes to the young person. And I'll come back to this, because if you're having to make the case to your employer, or if you're trying to get more of your staff to volunteer with us, it's useful to have some of that. It makes real impact to young people, stats, etc., that you can kind of come back to within that. So I'll come back to that bit. And then we run these national programs using technology as a base for volunteers to connect directly to state schools. schools. And we developed those with teachers and teaching unions. So we've really tried to put kind of schools at the heart. And I think that's one of the key reasons for us why Maritime UK work with us, because we have that existing network of schools. So Inspiring the Future is the brand name that you'll see as a volunteer, and that's the brand name that we use with secondary schools and colleges. Primary Futures is exactly the same. It works off the same platform, but it's the brand name that we use with primary schools. And just as an FYI and why that happened, basically when primary schools came to us and said, we want to do this with you, they said it has to have the word primary in and it needs to be colours that we recognise with. So those colours work with the National Association of Head Teachers that represent 98% of head teachers, and it gives us a good, really great route into primary schools because we've got senior leadership on board for that. So just so you understand why on earth we've got all these brands and what they mean together. We've got about 80% of secondary schools and colleges that have registered with Inspiring the Future at any one time, and we've about 25% of primary schools within England that have registered as well. And then we work with, on about an academic year basis, around 1,500, 2,000 schools across the country. So that's kind of like where that is. Inspiring Governance, I'll come back to, but it's also a volunteering opportunity for you and your colleagues and staff to get in at the strategic leadership position of a school, improving both your own skills, but also being able to be somebody that's there and saying, you know, where does Maritime come into this, alongside helping the school out as well. So I'll come back to that in a moment. So just next slide, Mutus. Oh, we lost it. I'm sure it'll come back up. Okay, so just having a think about what it looks like. Gordon's given us a really good view on this, but we thought we would share a quick video in case you haven't been back into school for a while. Let's see if we've got, there we go.
How do we inspire our future generation? How do we open young people's eyes and show them what is possible? That their background doesn't need to determine their future. How do we broaden their horizons and raise their aspirations and excite them about learning? By giving them the chance to meet people. Bringing people together. Sharing time. Sharing stories, sharing experiences. Giving them the chance to find out firsthand what the world of work is really like. This should be the right for all our children and young people. Because you can't be what you can't see. Together, we are inspiring the future.
Brilliant, thanks. And I think I've just muted. If people can stay on mute, that would be great. So that's kind of like what it looks like in schools. And as you can see, we're coming from the point of view of, you know, the children and young people and what they need to broaden their horizons, to sort of dispel potentially some of the myths they might have about particular sectors and jobs, who can do those jobs as well. So here's a few bits of the research which demonstrates the impact that it actually has for children and young people. So Drawing the Future and Starting Early are both looking at why you want to work with primary school children. So in Drawing the Future, we got sort of 20,000 children across the world, with about 12,000 of those within the UK to draw what they wanted to be when they were older and to tell us what their influences were. And the key things that came out of that was that gender stereotypes start from a very young age. So although if you ask children at primary school, can boys and girls do the same job? 98% said yes. Although you ask that, when they start to draw what they want to be, you can see unconscious bias coming through quite quickly from the ages of about 6 and 7. So that sort of piece of research really helped on that. And there's some real good, real similarities across the world in terms of what this looked like. Starting Early then had a synthesis of the impact it can make by actually introducing children to role models from an early age within that. So the impact comes around them learning about a new job, So raising their aspirations, broadening horizons, making the link between learning, and Gordon obviously picked up on that in terms of some of the subjects that you might be using within your jobs as well, and motivating them around their schooling. So there's some really nice kind of feedback within that. There's some case studies as well. And for us, this is not about getting, a 9-year-old to choose the job they want to do at that point. This is about making sure they don't close down options at an early age, which then kind of perpetuates through secondary school, because we found that there was quite a large similarity between what children were thinking about at the ages of 7, 8, 17. But then that didn't really match kind of what the world of work looks like. So there's a disconnect to that. So you need to kind of start at an early age. Motivated to Achieve was around the impact for young people on their GCSE results. So you can actually kind of have a real impact on academic attainment by just motivating them at a particular point in their secondary school. And you also think about kind of, GCSE options and subjects that they might choose and pathways. And again, Gordon picked up on kind of the pathways bit that you can talk about when you're talking to children and young people. And then on the flip side, value for you. So value of volunteering is a really nice piece of research that looks at kind of the value that volunteers get out of this from a point of view of well-being, the skills that they develop through volunteering in skills and at schools, and it will also talk about governance as well. So that's just some of the things that you can rely upon if you're having to push the message out, or if you're thinking about like, where does this lead with that? Okay, next slide, please, Meetus. So in terms of our work with Maritime UK, we've been working together over the last 2.5 years broadly. We've had 262 volunteers sign up. So some of that might be some of the people on the call now. If you've not yet signed up, we'll go on to how you can do that. You can see that across the different programs. What happens when you sign up is that schools will then find you, and Meetus will talk a bit more about the process, but schools will then find you and invite you into activities, and that's primary all the way through to colleges. They can invite you now, sort of as we come out of the pandemic, to in-person activities and also to virtual activities. In person will be based about where you are in the country and your geography. And then obviously virtual, you can volunteer anywhere right across the country. You can accept and decline invitations. So that's where the kind of acceptance comes from on that. This is down to you. So it's trying to be a very flexible volunteering proposition that works within your time. We just ask that you do respond so that teachers know what to do. And you can search for volunteering opportunities as well on the platform. So what we're really trying to do here is have a technology-based solution that enables both people within the maritime sector and ourselves to work at scale. But there's a lot of kind of support around this, and this is a people thing. This is about your stories and authentic stories within that, and connecting directly with children, young people. And it's gone up slightly from what from Ben's figure. So through the campaign together, we've engaged nearly 80,000 children and young people, and those will be through those virtual sessions that we've talked about, through the in-person sessions that will be happening within some schools, and also through some pre-recorded videos that are being pushed out on our platform as well. Okay, I think I'm handing to me just to talk about the process a bit.
Sorry, yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Mitus. I work with Katie, and I'm the partnership manager at Education and Employers. So earlier on, you heard from Gordon about his experience volunteering under our Inspiring the Future program, and you'll hear from 2 more volunteers later on about what exactly you will be doing when you volunteer. So it is a flexible commitment. It's from an hour to a year, so it depends on your availability, and all it is being done through our online system. So you can be invited to do an in-person or face-to-face, or it can be virtual. So obviously, if it's in person, there's a lot of activities you can do to make it more interactive. If it's virtual, then you have we'll be able to reach more schools and more students. So there are 3 ways to take part in volunteering activities. So as Kate said, once you register, the schools can directly contact you through our online system, but you can also be proactive and look for volunteering opportunities yourself through the portal as well. With the charity, we also organize events, such as the event that we had yesterday with Maritime UK. So if it's our event, then we will send the information to you, and then you can let us know if you are available to participate. So as you can see on the slide, for primary schools, we usually do the What's My Line activity, which Gordon already explained. So the kids really love this because it gives them a chance to to participate, to take part, and ask questions like simple questions, the yes, which is answerable by yes or no, and then they get to guess what the job of the volunteer is. Um, with the secondary students, we would normally do the careers chat, wherein you just talk about your job. So what it is, what do you do, what did you do in school, what's your day-to-day like, or what do you enjoy most? And then there's a Q&A afterwards. And then we also do the speed networking, which the students and the teachers find very valuable. So this is when we have about 6 to 8 volunteers in the room, and they have about 10 minutes to talk to a group of students, and then ask for them to ask questions, and then they move on to another group of students, and so on. So obviously, the speed networking works better if it's an in-person event. So as Gordon said again, there's very minimal preparation required for you, because all we want is for you to really talk about what you do. And before every event, we will always have a briefing to give you pointers about what to talk about. Um, Sorry, can we mute, please? Okay, I'll just continue. Um, so what we would ask from the volunteers is that when you do your talks, use words and terminologies which are as simple and as easy to understand, and obviously it needs to be wholesome. We also want to make it as engaging and as interactive as possible. So we've got a few suggestions on some examples of props and visuals that you can use, because they will greatly help when you do your presentations. And then after the event, we will ask feedback from both the students and the staff and the volunteers as to how the event has impacted them. So we will be sending you the presentation, and you can have a look at all the feedback that we've received from the students and the teachers. And we'll obviously share it with you, with the volunteers. Okay, so hopefully we've given you an idea as to what is expected or when you volunteer. As we said, it is very flexible. It's really up to you how much time you can give. And in terms of preparation, is a very minimal requirement from you, and we will always be available to support. So what happens when you, so the next step would be to sign up, and the link will be sent to you either by Jess or by us. And once you click the register here, you'll be asked to complete a short profile, which which is which will be visible to the schools and the colleagues using the platform. So for you to increase your chance of being contacted by schools, we would suggest that you tick uh, the 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 line that says you are happy to volunteer virtually when you register. So once you register, the schools and then us can contact you, can send you invitations, and then you can also proactive seek out for opportunities, volunteering opportunities on the portal yourself. So once you accept our invitation or the school's invitation, then you can plan the activity with us or with them. Once you've registered, you will also be able to access this website, the portal, and you will have access to materials to support you. So there will be tips about how to participate in virtual sessions, how you can engage with young people, and don't forget that you also have access to Maritime UK or Careers at Sea resources if you need to. So all the sessions are tailored to meet the school's safeguarding requirements, so the teachers will always be present, and it will be run via on secure online platforms. So another example of the guides that you can find on our platform. So it's guide to in-person activities, a checklist, and everything. So that's it for volunteering under the Inspiring the Future program. I'd like to call on Katie again to talk about inspiring governance.
Hi, yeah, I'm just briefly going to mention this because we are looking at doing a future dedicated session for Maritime UK if for people that are interested in becoming governors. But basically, through the same platform, you can add an activity of becoming a governor in school. For those of you that already do this or know, there are thousands of governor vacancies at schools across England all the time. It is a deepening of your commitment, but it's a fantastic way of gaining kind of leadership skills. So you can have a look there in terms of the commitment on there, 5 to 8 hours a month. In terms of the number of meetings that you do, there is preparatory reading to have ahead of that. I'm a governor of a primary school down in Brighton myself. It's been a fantastic way of getting engaged in the local community, and I am sort of seeing those like board level skills be improved as well. And then it depends, and you are able to kind of subtly, etc., have a push of the maritime sector and consider sort of how that might be positioned within the school, and just gain the feedback of actually how the education system's working and the subjects they are learning and how that sort of is impacting on teachers. It'll give you a really good insight for people that are interested in that. As I said, we are looking at a future session where we dedicate a bit more time to this for people that are interested, and please do let us know if you want any more information on that. Okay, I think I'm handing back, Jess, to you, and then there'll be Q&A afterwards. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Katie and Midas. That was really, really good and really insightful. I think some of the key points to take away from that is we're not asking you to give up every day of your life. The commitment is trying to do one session, which could be an hour long each year, to keep your profile active. And I think there's some really good ways to engage, either virtually or in person. Also, as part of the Ambassador Network, you'll receive information from Maritime UK, so there's the potential opportunity to get involved in the activities we run. For example, during Maritime UK Week, ambassadors were invited along to a Welcome to Maritime Q&A session virtually, and they were also invited along to different opportunities such as a careers event on board the Cutty Sark. So speaking of ambassadors, I'm going to hand over to Alison Layton, who's going to give a bit of information about her experience so far.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure how much I can add to everything that you've already spoken about, because there was an awful lot, that I had to think about when I first started, and I am still relatively new. I joined Inspiring the Futures at the start of COVID because I thought I need to keep myself occupied as well as doing work, but do something else interesting as well. And through that, and it was by chance, because when you bring up your profile up, for some stupid reason, I didn't put maritime in, although I'm in the maritime sector. So it was by chance that a colleague said to me, have you heard about this? Because she knew I was working involved in the Inspiring Futures. So I kind of came into it in the Maritime UK sector in a very different way, and I was very pleased to join the Q&A session back in October. So I haven't done too much, but what I can say is, as Gordon said and others have said, don't prepare, because if you do prepare, my first one that I did, I had a couple of pages and it sounded very mechanical. When I was, I'll own up, it did sound mechanical. You could tell I was reading off a page, and I think I threw it away after that because it was just pointless. But I find it so personally rewarding to talk to children who have absolutely no idea of the maritime sector. And I have to say, I was one of them. When I was at school, I was brought up in a seaside town. I had no idea of any of the activities and the careers that you could have going to sea. Not that I personally have been to sea. And the reason I wanted to become an ambassador is because my route into the industry was very unconventional. And I was actually going to be an interpreter, or wanted to be an interpreter, but I had family circumstances that prevented that. And so I think what I wanted to bring to the discussions is that you don't have to know what you want to do. when you leave school or before you leave school. And it doesn't mean to say that when you do leave school and you go down one route that you can't go down a different route halfway through. And also, having no qualifications doesn't stop you from getting anywhere. I think that is a very key thing to let people know, that, you know, you don't have to go to uni, as Gordon said, you don't have to have a trade. I had no maritime background, and I literally came into the agency here to answer the telephones. And then 24 years later, I'm doing the job that I'm doing now. So I think that's the kind of message that I wanted to bring across, that it's okay not to know right now, but don't rule it out, because there are lots of really interesting jobs in maritime and also in the civil service. A lot of people see the civil service as quite boring, but it isn't. There are some really, really interesting jobs out there. So that's about it from me. I mean, that seems to be more about my own personal journey, but that is the reason I joined and what I wanted to get across. So thank you.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much, Alison. And as Alison mentioned, she was part of our Welcome to Maritime Q&A session in Maritime UK Week, and some great questions came off from that, all about the maritime sector and how to join the maritime sector. I think kind of one of the key areas she mentioned as well is that it's really important in your profile to ensure that you're including the Inspiring the Future Maritime program in your profile, to say, because some students will search by that. And if, for example, you are working at sea, there is a section for employer. If potentially you are working offshore, working for multiple different employers, you can have the opportunity to put some more detail in about that. Gordon, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, although I've spoken enough already, and sort of hopefully given everyone like a real flavour of how exciting it is and challenging, and what, you know, you can benefit yourself as a volunteer. But one of the other important things, I don't know if you're going to raise it before the end, but I thought I'd butt in anyway, is they're minors. You're working with children, so I know for those that love the Insta Facegram malarkey, it's very tempting when you are on your virtual tour to control print screen, take a screen grab or whatever, because you want to put it on your social media. Please don't do that. How I do it, and I think there is a reference somewhere within the videos or the instructions there, is you can go on the Inspiring the Future website, click on their address, and you can post that. So wherever you're posting that you've done this challenge, you had a lovely day with this school, etc., there should be no pictures of children, the classroom environment, but of course you can mention the year group maybe, or the school that you attended, and then I use the Inspiring the Future logo. So primarily that's part of safeguarding with the children, and secondly it's obviously promoting, like I do with Maritime UK and Inspiring the Future logos. So hopefully that way, if you put that across social media, it might raise other people's profiles and think, yeah, maybe that's a good idea, and I'll volunteer. So always calling for volunteers. Cheers.
Yeah, 100%. That was a really great point to make, Gordon. Thank you. So the next ambassador we're going to hear from is Andy, about his experiences. I think he's just disappeared off my screen, but I'm sure he will come back shortly.
Hi, Jess, can you hear me? Just testing comms.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, guys. I think Gordon said it all at the start, really, didn't he? So I don't need to say anything. But I guess, you know, just in terms of expanding on some of that, you know, the reason I sort of got involved in this, and I've probably been doing it for 3 or 4 years now, which includes going into schools when we can go into schools, doing things online, you know, etc. So there's a whole variety of things that you can do. But I guess for me, you know, it was about, you know, trying to help the youngsters and the teachers, and don't forget that the teachers don't understand the maritime domain. My sister's a head teacher in a school up north. And you know, even though I spent 20 years in the Navy, and I've spent 20 years carrying on doing sort of underwater stuff on and around things like that. So I've been involved in sort of maritime for, you know, getting on towards 40 years now. But again, it's fascinating to me, as a maritime nation, so few people understand what maritime actually means. And I guess, you know, part of me getting involved in this is trying to help people understand what it means. And again, as Gordon said, you know, it can be literally everything. And I suspect chimney sweeps will be there somewhere. So the reality is, there's probably not a job that you can't do in the maritime domain that isn't somewhere else. And I guess the other bit is, bearing in mind, you know, I'm amongst, you know, a bunch of maritime people here as a maritime community. I think we've got to recognise as the maritime community, we are engaged, whether we know it or not, in what I'll call a war for talent. And the reality is, you know, we've got to make sure, being parochial about maritime, that if we don't get into, and again, it was one of the books earlier, if we don't get into the schools, and you know, certainly at the early age, well, the chances are somebody else is going to get in there. And you know, my son, I think I failed with my son because he likes Formula One, and he's not going to get into maritime, but that's fine, you know, hey ho. But I guess, you know, I just say that as something about, you know, we need to get into the schools and colleges and make sure people understand what maritime can be. And I guess, you know, for me, you know, it's about, we're all busy people. You know, we've all got day jobs to go to, and I think it was Ben at the start said, you know, the volunteers do this, you know, on top of their day job. It's, for me, you know, this is part of my day job. I don't really see it as on top of, and I see it, you know, from my perspective, as something that's, it's not really optional. You know, if we want to inspire the future, our future generations, we've got to get on and do this. And even if it's just, if it is an hour, you know, a year, that's fine, that's brilliant. I think what you'll find is that once you've done your first hour, it does become a bit addictive. Because of the people that you engage in, the questions you get, the enthusiasm, it just is addictive. And then when you go into the first school, whether that's real or virtual, I remember the first time I did it, and you get a load of cards from the kids saying thank you, and you know, all the questions you get, and you just think, wow, you know, I've had a brilliant job at, you know, in the day job, but then you do this and you think, flipping out, that just blows it all away. Because you get thanked from whether it's from the you know, the teachers, or whether it's from the kids themselves. And I guess I'd just say it is so inspiring. So I think it goes back to what Ben said at the start. I think, you know, in terms of, you know, part of this is raising the national consciousness about maritime, and we've all got stories to tell. And I'd say, just again, you know, people have said it before me. You know, don't worry too much about preparation. If you do have to prepare something, the chances are you'll be able to use it again and again and again. Because, you know, I've got when I do the, you know, if I've got a sort of PowerPoint presentation I sometimes use now, and I just use the same one every time, because it's talking to the youngsters, and you've got some sort of exciting pictures about, you know, not all submarines are yellow submarines. And again, it's just trying to sort of dispel those myths and rumours. That the reality is, and again, I think it's Lorna said a while ago, you can have a maritime career without getting your feet wet. But by the way, if you want to get your feet wet, that's absolutely fine. If you want to dive really deep underwater, that's absolutely fine as well. But you don't have to get your feet wet. That's probably enough for me, if I have to take questions at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy. And I think that's a really good point to pick up on. You can have a maritime career without getting your feet wet, but obviously it is an option to get your feet wet if you'd like. And I think throughout this programme, obviously you're going to go into the schools and you're going to talk about your role. But I think the students you'll be talking to, some of them might not be that interested in your role, but they might be interested in a different area of maritime. And I think quite a lot of you will have knowledge about the different areas of maritime without even realizing it, and you'll be able to speak about roles in ports even if you're in the merchant navy. So yeah, it's definitely really good to highlight that you don't have to go to sea potentially to be part of the maritime industry. So yeah, thank you very much to all of our ambassadors for joining. So if anyone does have any questions, please put them into the chat, but just to kind of highlight some key points. I'm sure some of you were previously involved in the Careers at Sea Ambassador Programme, so that's now joined up with us, and it falls under this umbrella of the Maritime Industry Ambassadors, because obviously Careers at Sea are all part of the wider maritime industry as well. So if you were previously a Careers at Sea ambassador and you haven't signed up for the Inspiring the Future programme and you're wondering why you haven't had any Careers at Sea emails, please sign up for the programme and then you'll start receiving information again. And the other key point to raise is this programme is currently only for UK schools, but if that expands in the future, we'll definitely be sharing it everywhere and shouting about it. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat, and myself and Katie and Mitas will be really happy to answer them. Oh, it's always a good sign when there's not many questions. Gordon, did you want to say anything more?
Yeah, only because there's nothing in the chat yet, and so nobody's got
Sounds
any questions.
good.
So I was trying to think, between Alison and Andy and you guys kicking it off, we pretty much covered all the bases. But so something else that hasn't been covered, as I would say, although some people are talking about an hour, because normally these sessions are an hour that you volunteer for, is that you haven't got to present for that whole hour. You're not talking for that whole hour. I've done them with sometimes 2 other ambassadors or 3 other ambassadors, and they're not necessarily maritime. So you might be the maritime element of a 3-person or 4-person sometimes, and as a volunteer, that's fantastic as well, because I learned about narrow boats from Tiffany, and she's lovely when she does this, and I've done it a couple of times with her. And somebody worked in the National Archives for the National History Museum, and I was like, wow, look at all these things. So what might be a boring or mundane job, when she had the artifacts and she was describing it and all that, I was like, yeah, brilliant. So, that can encourage you as well. So don't think you've got to deliver for an hour. You haven't. Sometimes it can be 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes it's half an hour. It's whatever you want to give. And also, like Andy was mentioning about a little slideshow or something. Yeah, don't use acronyms and your business buzzwords and things. Use lots of pictures, make it colourful. Just put the keywords in and then you talk the rest. So it's just some visuals while you're talking. Sometimes that help. And one that the Maritime UK did a while back, and I'm still using the same video clip, was me at work. So I used a video on my ship when I was based in Taiwan, and I quickly went around my ship, and then I was stood on the back deck talking about the equipment that's out there and what we did. And it was a short enough video. Through Dropbox and other third-party software, you can send those in to Maritime UK or the Inspiring the Future people. They'll keep it on record, so they can run that again when you do another one. So that's always helpful. Have we got any questions yet? But Andy's got his hand up. Go on, Andy.
I guess I was just going to say, again, same sort of thing with no questions. The other thing that's sort of good about the whole program is that it keeps you on your toes as well. Certainly from my perspective, getting used to IT, getting the IT working is sometimes a challenge, but that's fine. And the other thing that it makes you realise is, A, how things have changed, because they have a lot, which is good, and B, the schools themselves, that the people involved and the teachers particularly are fantastically enthusiastic, and they do just want to hear, and they just want to hear your stories, and as Gordon said, the other sort of spin-off benefit as well is, particularly when you're with a group of people, you learn loads of stuff yourself as well. And the children that you're sort of talking to, they ask you some really interesting questions that keeps you thinking. So I think, as well as being good for the people that you're sort of talking to, it's also good for you sort of personally and professionally.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that, Andy. I think we have had one question through from Richard about we don't always need to apply. Oh, yeah, I think Katie's answered that one as well. I think, as she said, if you do attend, please send them back to Inspiring the Future to find fellow volunteers. And also, if you just let us know the activities that you're doing, because I think it's the key thing we're trying to do is coordinate all of the activity for Maritime Careers promotion, and knowing what people are getting up to really helps us see the numbers of young people that are being inspired for a maritime career. Katie, did you want to add anything more on that one?
No, not at all. I mean, we're here as a connector, so we want to make it as easy as possible to be a connector. I don't want to become a barrier or anything in the way of that. So if you do get contacted by schools, then obviously, yeah, go for it. Fantastic. Let us know about it. But if you can't do something, please do pass them back to Inspire the Future, because they'll find more volunteers there. Yeah, that's all I'd say on that.
Perfect. Gordon.
Yeah, and finally there, I was going to say, like Andy did and Alison, being yourself is really important. So when we're talking about connections here, connections with the children, it's really easy to do, and you can do that by talking about yourself. So we're not all supermen, superwomen. We didn't all fall into the maritime on day one and had a fantastic career. So talking when it's appropriate, and when that session comes up, maybe you have a 5-minute, how did you get into it? I always talk about my challenging youth, my challenging background, come from a broken home, but the Navy made me, blah blah blah, sort of thing. But that's really interesting, and the children really connect with that, because some of them have learning challenges, they have environmental challenges, or challenges in their home life as well. So they can relate to you as an adult then giving that short story, and obviously it has to be somewhat of a précis, but yeah, I tend to put that in because that's really powerful, and they really connect with that, a lot of the children. So the two bright people in the children that have got all the great questions, yeah, sure, you're going to get that, but underlying that in a lot of the schools, inner city schools especially, and some of the rural ones as well, that I've gone to, there'll be some of those questions, and that's how it's all about, getting rid of those stereotypes, but broadening the horizon. So you come from that little fishing village, or you're stuck in that inner city, middle of going nowhere, and like was mentioned at the beginning, most of the children, the only way they've got of looking at the adult world of employment is what their parents do, and if they have or wish to aspire to more, not that not disrespecting anyone's career or job that they do, but if you want to inspire more, especially travel and moving around, which a lot of children would aspire to do, but find they're going to be locked into their town or their village, the maritime does open that up. So whatever career in the maritime, you can have that opportunity to travel and move around. But yeah, more importantly is telling your story, so that the children can assimilate of, how did you get where you were? How have you managed to achieve that? And if it is from a challenging background, it has even more impact as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that, Gordon. I think we've got one more question from Richard about the best email for passing on these requests. I think there'll be a general Inspiring the Future email, Katie.
Yeah, I'll just pop it in the chat, but it's if you do the inquiries at inspiringthefuture.org, because there's always a staff member behind that, by the way. It is personalized and stuff, so don't feel like it's just like an email box that doesn't go anywhere. There's always one of our staff, but that does mean that somebody will pick it up quickly. So I'll just pop that in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Katie. Well, we're coming to the end of today's session. So thank you for your questions, and thank you for attending as well and learning more about the Ambassador Programme. Hopefully you've been inspired to sign up today, and we'll send out some further information, including the recording and the slides, probably tomorrow morning. But yeah, really thank you for giving up your time today and learning about the programme. Brilliant. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.